Hi and welcome to this reading. Today's reading is a reading that will be housed within a group of readings in a playlist called A Wheel Within a Wheel. It's part of a bigger series of readings that I am doing, but it's pulling through individual energy. Now, prior to this reading, I was hearing the words, "Thou shalt not steal." And obviously that's a part of the 10 Commandments. But obviously, a lot of those laws actually run through each country's judicial system. And, we can look at it in terms of the law, but it's also the moral law, the ethical law. Now, as I said, I'm doing a playlist because what I've been doing over the past probably 18 months, 2 years, is pulling through all of this information about a bigger wheel globally, collectively, a bigger wheel, and then all of these tiny wheels that run within it. And the symbolism of 7 within the larger wheels and within the smaller wheels. As I said, I was getting "Thou shalt not steal." So if you've come to this reading, welcome. If you've stumbled across this reading, welcome. If you are returning, welcome back. A bit about me first. I'm an intuitive tarot reader. I pick up on energy prior to a reading. I'll then come and use my tarot and oracle decks to further clarify that message. Now, this message came through in varying different ways. I was getting the song Gangsta's Paradise. What is that, Coolio and LV? And if you can hear the crows bring information, spiritual wisdom. So I had been doing a bit of research into my own family history, my own lineage. On my father's side of the family, we are 7 generations. My father's side of the family came as immigrants to Australia in the mid-1800s. And they were farmers. So I'd been doing a bit of research into how they came here, what they did when they arrived. And it all revolves around the time shortly after when the British colonised Australia. And there are lots of 7/7 references. So this reading is going to be a broad overall reading with some broad themes in it that I've been picking up within my own country. But you can then apply those themes to something that's potentially happening to you. Because as I said, what I'm seeing is this pattern of this 7 wheel within a larger wheel. And this biggest spiritual journey that I'm on, collecting pieces, which kind of slots. It's almost like they're all little cogs in a wheel that turns this bigger wheel. So let me give you some context, because obviously when the British came to Australia, that was in 1770. James Cook stood on an island just off Sydney called Possession Island. Nice, I know, terrible name for an island. And claimed it for England. Now the irony is the current King of England is 77 years old. And that happened in 1770. So we've got 2 sevens within that year as well. The people, the indigenous population that lived in that area at the time, were called the Turrawal people, or it starts with a D, but it's pronounced Turrawal. And they were essentially driven off their land. I've actually been engaging in a spiritual tool called gematria. Gematria is an ancient biblical tool where letters align with numbers, and what you can do is you can put in a name or a phrase or a verse into the gematria calculator, and it will actually assign a letter to each number and give you a total value for that word. Now the gematria value for Dharawal is 1015. If you add those numbers together, you get a 7. Can you see this 7/7 theme running through? 1770, James Cook, 77 years old, is the current King of England. The longitude and latitude of the Dharawal people is 34 degrees south, 151 degrees east. Again, 34 adds up to a 7. 151 adds up to a 7. So it's 7-7 again. The 7th listed massacre in Australia, historically listed massacre in Australia, was a massacre of the Dharawal people. And I'll link a song, actually. There's a song called Dharawal. And it was the first military ordered massacre. So government ordered massacre. 16 people died, again a 7. It happened in 1816, again 1816 adds up to a 7. And as I said, it was the 7th massacre recorded. And they essentially, women, children, men, women, children, ran them up the side of a cliff. They had nowhere to go, and so they literally jumped to their deaths. Horrendous stuff. Mirroring things that are happening currently in the world. But this was happening 250 years ago. Which again, 250 years ago is a 7. It was in the... Actually, just let me check that. In the previous Pluto and Aquarius transit. Just after the previous Pluto and Aquarius transit, which is major revolutionary change. Now, revolutionary change for England, because obviously they came and they had this brand new country that they could use however they wanted, but they'd stolen it. Thou shalt not steal. And so the wheel turned for them in a great way, but obviously for the Indigenous people, the wheel went backwards. The Dharawal people are represented by the whale. That's their spirit animal. And in 1996, which also adds up to a 7, a huge tree within the lands of the Dharawal people was knocked down, hundreds of years old, this tree. And it was a birthing place for Aboriginal women to come to birth their babies under the shade of this big tree. Just near Appin, which is where that massacre was, and obviously within the land of that people. Now, Fig Tree, where this fig tree was, it's a suburb in Wollongong. The postcode of Fig Tree is 2525, again, 2 7s. The other tool that I've been using is, it's called Strong's Concordance. And essentially, when you put a word into Gematria, you can get a number, a value of that word. So Dharawal is 1015. And then Strong's is basically an index of all of the words within biblical text, Old and New Testament. It's an index of all the words in order. So the word that aligns with 1015 is House of Fig. So we've got these tie-ins between biblical text from thousands of years ago, tying in with what's happening in the future, meaning, well, what's happened in the past, which I'm picking up in the future. It's almost like Back to the Future, really, isn't it? But if you look at these biblical references, and it came through in a reading yesterday, thou shalt not steal comes from the 10 Commandments, which was a set of laws that were given by Moses to a people that they had to abide by. That lineage back, you go back to Adam and Eve, first man, which has a value of 45. Adam means red earth. When I think of red earth, I think of Uluru. The Australian Aboriginal people are the oldest living people in the world. They've been here the longest. They are the First Nations people. And so if you think about what's happening in the context of what's happening in the world at the moment, where countries like Israel are 77 years old this year, 2025, a 2 and a 25 is 7, 2 7s. 2025, Adam is 45, which adds up to a 9, which is also this year, 2025. If you add the numbers together, adds up to a 9. It's beginnings and endings. And it's all revolving around this theme of thou shalt not steal. And many have called Australia the New Jerusalem. these First Nations people, but this horrible, horrible history of 250 years worth of massacres within this country. These were the cards that came out prior to the reading. 59, Harahel, fertility and abundance, and the Knight of Pentacles. The Knight of Pentacles is Saturn in Capricorn. It is lesson after lesson after lesson after lesson after lesson. Repeating. History repeats. Repeating these lessons over and over and over again, and wondering why we get into the conflicts that we get into. It's because we're doing the same thing over and over. But this card here, fertility and abundance, and that card aligns with Mars and Aquarius. It's the Knight of Swords. It is somebody charging in with their truth. I'm going to pop this here, because what I would say to you is fertility and abundance is if you've stolen something, but you've done it in what is deemed to be a lawful way, then is it really stealing? And it goes back to that whole, and I think the word is jurisprudence. There's a legal debate, but there's also a moral debate. Now, if we're pulling in these fig tree themes, Adam and Eve stole from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. They took what they weren't meant to take. God passed judgment and booted them out. It's judgment. Judgment is the law. Judgment for what they stole. But it's that fig tree prophecy coming through, and the fig tree prophecy is about the second Adam. Essentially, the opportunity for the collective, the bigger wheel. Imagine yourself, if you've had something stolen from you, so you're little Adam within a little wheel, that's within a little wheel. We're talking about the big wheel. The second Adam, the second coming, if you believe in that sort of stuff. There's some sort of karmic justice that's coming through this year. Because 45 is Adam, 45, and then the second Adam is 45, and 245, so 45 by 45 is 2025, which is this year. And if I take it back to all the other things that are coming through around this 77, 77 was when Jacob had his dream, Jacob's troubles. He tricked his father and stole, or tried to steal from his brother, and literally was run out of town. And then he went into this contract of 7 years with his uncle in order to marry. But then he was tricked and he had to work another 7. So this 7-7 again. These running themes. Now, if you apply that 7-7, or 77 years, takes us to 2025. When he was released from that contract, 84 years, which is 2032. Now, that's an Olympic year. And actually, the Olympics are in Brisbane, which is my city, in 2032. This bigger world wheel. You know, it'd be interesting to see which countries actually are at play when the Olympics is on. Competition. I just heard all trying to steal the gold. But whatever it is that you're in, whatever it is that's been stolen, if you can take a step back and look at it in the context of, these cards may not give you an outcome. And I'm not your normal tarot reader in terms of, I was thinking about this yesterday. If you leave a tarot reading and you get the answer that you're looking for, then it's not necessarily how things are going to play out. For me, I like to leave a tarot reading with more questions than I had when I went in, when I started watching. I like a tarot reader who makes me open up my mind and sends me further down the spiritual rabbit hole. Fertility and abundance, something that you were growing. But on the flip side, because we've got 2 sevens, right? Fertility and abundance, something that you were growing, but something that somebody stole from you that they are now growing. And in this respect, and I'll get into why in a minute, but in this respect, if you take a bigger look, a bigger spiritual look at what's going on in the world, in regards to, has somebody taken something from you that is morally wrong, but legally justified? Fertility and abundance. 5 and a 9 is 14, which is the Temperance card. I did a reading the other day. The Temperance card is Sagittarius and Jupiter. Jupiter is the wheel of fortune. It's the wheel turns, but the 2 fish is the symbol of Pisces, which is kind of in the constellation of Pisces is there's a big V basically, and it's 2 fish that are tied to this string. So you and somebody else that's tied to this, whatever's been stolen, going round and round and round and round in circles, because one person is morally right, but the other person is legally right. Well, who wins? No one. You go round and round and round and round. And if you're in some sort of legal battle, you are... The person that wins is the person with the biggest pocket, right? The Knight of Pentacles, the person with the biggest pocket. You got 2 people there. That's somebody older, somebody younger, somebody wealthier, somebody poorer. The Knight of Pentacles is Saturn in Capricorn. Well, Saturn is your karmic teacher, and Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. So it's lesson after lesson after lesson. But it's the battle of good and evil, which is that fig tree in the Garden of Eden, because they stole from it and then they had to wear fig leaves. The fig tree prophecy. The battle of knowledge, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. My mum's got a saying, it says, anybody will do anything if given half the chance. So if there is a legal way to get around doing something that is morally wrong, people will do it. And generally speaking, it's the people who do the right thing, who aren't morally corrupt, that are the people that get trodden all over. And that's why I would say to you is, if you can take a step back, and I can give you an example actually. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, I had a business, worked my tail to get it up and running, all the websites, you know, everything was done. And we had a company and we trademarked everything, and we didn't stop somebody coming in and literally taking everything, word for word. All of our documents, everything that was available to the public was taken and replicated under a different skin on their website. And then they took us to the trademark tribunal, trying to have our trademark revoked, even though they'd stolen everything. Now, we won in the end, but for me, within that, I got the opportunity to take a step back and go, you know what? And I made the decision just to walk away. Even though we won, I made the decision to walk away and just close down the business. Because I think for me, the spiritual lesson in that was that it wasn't really about the business. It was about what I was willing to put up with, the boundaries I set, the time and effort that I invested in that business, and what it actually, the time that it took away from my family time. And I just made the decision that I didn't want to invest anymore. And whatever that situation was, I think it was the spiritual catalyst for a big change in my life. And I would say to you, if you are in a battle with somebody, if somebody's stolen something from you, there's a bigger spiritual lesson in it, and it doesn't really matter who's right or wrong if you can unearth what the spiritual lesson is in it. Knight of Pentacles is Saturn in Capricorn. So Saturn is your karmic teacher. The World card, which is the end of the tarot, it's the end of this. The Fool's Journey is the tarot. It's the end of it. It's where you learn everything you can within a situation and you go, you know what? Thanks for the lessons. I'm off on my new adventure. That's where you are, I think. Pulling together or trying to. I mean, if you're coming to a reading about something that's been stolen from you, I don't know. I mean, like I said, even though we won in court, I still walked away fairly angry that somebody had stolen something. Because for me, my sun is in Libra. That's wrong. I don't like people who jump in queues in front of people. I don't like people who don't put their shopping trolley, their shopping cart back after they finish. I'm very black and white in terms of you can't do that. And so stealing for me is huge. So even though we won, it didn't give me the... And I would say to you, if you are going holus bolus towards the win, you might not actually get the victory that you're searching for. It might still leave you a little with a bad taste in your mouth. So let me give you some context, because as I said to you, my paternal side of the family has been here for 7 generations. Sorry, my drink bottle was just making a noise and it was annoying me. My paternal side of the family has been here for 7 generations. They were farmers and they had a farm that was passed down from generation to generation to generation. Now it stopped at my father's generation. My grandfather actually sold the farm and my father went on to actually do a lot of work with Indigenous communities, if I'm honest. But I was searching up in the Gematria code what the code was for the name of the farm. Now it was called Merino Park, and the Gematria for it is 365, which aligns with many words, one of which is Seoul, as in Seoul, South Korea, but the other one is immigration, which is just beautiful given that they were immigrants. When you take that number, 365, and you put it into Strong's, which is that index of all the biblical text, what aligns with Strong's is 2 things. 365 aligns with a version of a word, and I can't pronounce it, Aliyah, and it means doe or hind, which also aligns with 355, a different spelling of that word, which again means doe or hind. Now, hind is the name of the little girl in Palestine who was found passed away with her family in that car after the tank had shot 355 bullets at the car. So we've got this wheel within a wheel. We've got this context of what's currently happening, back to the future, what's currently happening in the Middle East at the moment, aligning with settlers, my grandparents, the name of this farm, settlers who arrived in Australia and settled the land, which would have been Indigenous land, and it aligns with this name, Hind. Now, in a stroke of absolute, I can't believe, and I now know who is communicating with me, it's actually my grandfather, sending me lots and lots of spiritual messages. And it makes sense because once I kind of tapped into that, I have just been getting biblical reference after biblical reference. My grandfather was a walking biblical encyclopedia, which is why I'm getting all of this stuff. He could literally recite the Bible and the Torah from the front to the back to the back to the front. He was, anytime you had a conversation with him, he was touting the Bible. And as young kids, we kind of all went, "Ooh," you know, and sort of stayed away. Because if you got stuck talking to him, you literally got stuck reading the Bible or hearing him, you know, recite the Bible for hours on end. But I was trying to take a screenshot to send it to my dad of this family farm name that meant 365. And that aligned with what's currently going on. And this little girl who lost her life because of this war between, you know, these two parties. I was trying to take the screenshot, and I'm going to show you the screenshot. Every time I went to take the screenshot, it would move. The screen would move, and I'd get really frustrated. It was because there was this pop-up ad coming up at the top, and so it had moved the screen over, and so I'd take the screenshot, but half the words I needed were kind of out of frame, and so I had to go in and very, very deliberately wait until it was aligned perfectly and then take the shot. So here's 365, Aleph, Do Hind, also aligns with 355, Do Hind, which is the name of the little girl, but 365 in Gematria is the same number as the name of their farm. And so I was trying to take a photo, and this stupid ad kept popping up at the top, Merino Park 365. But can you read? This is my grandfather talking to me. Thou shalt not steal. And to give you goosebumps, my grandfather's name was Stan. Thou shalt not steal. How crazy is that? You have people around you. You have passed over loved ones around you that hold the key to how you move forward in this situation. And I know, like my grandfather, he went to that particular part of the Middle East many, many, many times. He was, I would say, in the last 20, 30 years of his life, a biblical scholar. And so I have always wondered, as I watched everything that's gone on over the last 18 months, 2 years within that region, I've always thought to myself, what would he think? What would Papa think? And I think in situations where you are going through something where you've got, something's happened to you that's morally wrong but is legally justified, you just want somebody to say, to be on your side and say, you know what, that's wrong. And it's of even more value if it is somebody from the past, somebody with a really strong sense of moral value and moral grounding, which parents, grandparents, great-grandparents have. There's something lying within a photo album, a book, a Christmas card, a birthday card. There's something lying dormant within it that will actually allow you, I'm going to use the word for confirmation, the confirmation that morally you are right and that a passed over loved one has your back. And I'll show you why. This Bible, my grandfather, Papa, gave to me in 1987. That's 7. Now, I don't read the Bible. I mean, I grew up in Catholic schools, you know, but I mean, it was never really something that I did. But of course, grandparents give you Bibles. Confirmation. Even this, where to look in the Bible. Bear a grudge. Luke 6, 2, Corinthians 4, Ephesians 4. I mean, I've never looked at that. Okay, but confirmation. There's something that some passed over loved one has given you that will give you confirmation as to the fact if you are morally right in a situation, but you can't get over the line because somebody is holding some sort of legal over you, then potentially all you need to walk away from the situation is to know that somebody that you loved and cared about from your past would have your back if they could stand beside you. And they are standing beside you. They're just doing it in the spiritual realm, because I only found this Bible. I'm 50 this year. This was my, what would I have been, grade 7, 11, 10, 11, maybe 12. And I was doing some rearranging and I found it and I thought, oh crap, there's a card in there. I better read that, because I'm positive I didn't read it on the day. Read it for Papa. Psalm 111, the security of the godly. And it talks about, in praise of the Lord, the happiness of a good person. It's about how to be a morally good person. And what it's saying in there, and it took me a while to read it, because Bible text, and it's probably why I never really read it, it's like reading Shakespeare. It's like, oh, my brain hurts. Light shines in the darkness for good men, for those who are merciful, kind, and just. Happy is the person who is generous with his loans, who runs his business honestly. A good person will never fail. He will always be remembered. I just think it's beautiful. And, you know, if you've not watched any of my readings before, it's I think why I pick up a lot of this 7/7 reference is because my name is Rachel, and my family name, this name that came through, this was Jacob. And it was Jacob. And obviously I'm married now, so I've got a different surname, but Jacob's troubles at 77. Jacob worked for 7 years before he could marry Rachel. Like, it's all these 7/7 references and things tied within, unknowingly tied within your name. Now, months ago when I found this, that's something my mother-in-law gave me. My son, the number plate, the government issued number plate on his car aligns with, and it's not exactly that, I'm not going to tell you the number plate of my son's car, but aligns with Ezekiel, which is 38:39, the defeat of Gog and Magog, like the baddies. That's God defeating the baddies. Again, it's on the number plate of my son's car. And the irony is, my daughter's name in Strong's actually aligns with that as well. Crazy, right? These things that just align. But I'm going to find it. This other thing that was in here, this tiny, and now I've asked before and nobody's actually responded within a reading, but this tiny little set, this was in here. I don't know if he put it in there. The living stone and the holy nation. The stone which the builders rejected as worthless turned out to be the most important of all. That's you. Because what's more important than being legally right is being morally right. And another scripture says, this is a stone that will make people stumble, the rock that will make them fall. Peter 2. I don't know. Maybe it's a message for somebody. Maybe it's a message for somebody. Have a look. Have a look at your... I mean, it makes me want to have a look at the family history of... Now, they purchased the land. They purchased the land from, I would imagine, the state government in terms of building the farm. But how did the state government get the land? And it's like a loophole within a loophole. So if you purchase stolen land, legally you're in the right, but morally, I don't know. It makes me want to look into it. And maybe that's why the farm was never passed along. because for my generations of family, because that farm would have gone to my father and then to, you know, my brothers and sisters. Maybe it's that point in time, that 7 generations of not. And they do say that ancestral karma is passed through and is only cleared after the 7th generation. Well, my kids would be the 7th generation. Something that's stolen. Let's pull some cards. Now, I know this reading is probably a combination of, as I said, you know, the overlying spiritual, the bigger wheel within the smaller wheel, and then you're in this tiny wheel. But if you can get some broader context as to what's going on, and you can walk away from some sort of conflict that you're in where somebody's stolen from you with a better spiritual understanding, and that feeling of, you know what, all of this horrible stuff happened, but morally, because that's what I think of, you know, if somebody said to me, what is heaven? I would say, leaving the earthly plane, knowing that I was a good person. And that's what my grandfather said. You know, read this passage for Papa. How to be a good person. How to be a morally sound person. Actually, I'm going to get tying up loose ends. Walking away. How to be a morally remain completion. That's the World card. And remain calm at this time. You've got to take a step back and look at whatever's happening, whatever theft this is, on a spiritual level. Because you may not get the outcome that you want. Now, I don't know whether I said, all my readings are timeless. Whenever you stumble across this reading, you're meant to find it. There's a message in here for you. If the reading resonates with you, give it a like. If you haven't already, please subscribe. All of the decks that I use on my channel are my own designs because I'm also an illustrator. And funnily enough, one of the decks, this one, my grandparents, on one of their big trips after they sold the farm, one of their big trips, because they went on many trips around the world, my grandmother bought a set of teacups, and that was the inspiration for one of my decks. There's things from your ancestors, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, further back down the lineage. And actually, in fact, we're talking about the fig tree prophecy, just in a conversation that I had with my dad last week. Because I was asking, how many generations along are we in my own research that I'm doing? And he said that one of my grandfathers was born under a fig tree. And I think of, you know, that fig tree, I think of that fig tree that was cut down in fig tree in Wollongong, that was connected to the Dharawal people. Again, something stolen from them. Their lives were stolen from them. This place where they birthed their babies was stolen from them. It makes me think of the movie Avatar. And that big tree that was cut down. So yes, if you're interested in any of my tarot or oracle decks, the links to those can be found in the description box. I will also put the links to any movies or songs that I reference in there as well. There might be more messages in the lyrics, music videos, or movies that they're attached to. Okay, let's get a general energy. Oh, whoa. Okay, super chatty. I'm going to start again. A general energy for the collective at the moment around this theme of thou shalt not steal. Knight of Cups. That's the moon in Scorpio. Ten of Cups. It's somebody's built their happiness. They're like, look what I've got, because legally they can. But it's been on your destruction. And if I go back to that, Merino Park is 365. It's 365 days in a year. The beginning and the end. The moon in Scorpio, and Scorpio is Pluto, which is revolution. Ten of Cups. That's to me, that's spiritual lessons. 10 spiritual lessons. 10s is also completion. Tying up loose ends, completion. I still go back to that, you know. This is what's happening for you. You're getting spiritual wisdom. That's Archuncle. Maybe you've got an uncle that is providing you some spiritual wisdom. Archangel Michael's sword of truth. But it's spiritual truth. It's coming in from God. It's coming in from God. Spiritual truth. And I've just gone quiet because I had a dream the other night. I had a dream about a friend who had passed away. He passed away, not last year, the year before. Ironically, his birthday is the 7th of the 7th. And he knew he was going to pass away. In the dream, we were at the funeral home, and he was showing me the coffin that he had selected. And he was quite jovial about it. He was telling me about the padding on the inside, and I just remember in this dream just looking at him like, what are we doing? Like, but it was almost he had reconciled with the completion of something, and he was leaving the situation, meaning leaving the earthly plane, morally a good person, and he was a beautiful, beautiful soul. If you can walk away from this situation with your integrity, with your morals intact and with your integrity, it doesn't matter who wins or loses, no matter what somebody has stolen from you. Eight of Swords in the soul. Now, the Eight of Swords is Jupiter in Gemini. Gemini is communication. But Gemini is also, well, in the Major Arcana, it's the Lover's card, which is the choice. You've got a choice. Your soul has a choice to either stay in the battle or walk away. And if you choose to walk away, learning the spiritual lesson of it, then you actually get spiritual wisdom. It's the last judgment. Jupiter and Gemini. That card aligns with the current astrological placement at the moment, which is 12-month placement, and Jupiter goes into Cancer, which is a Chariot, which is movement forward. So, you know, movement forward, potentially you get a win, or movement forward, you move yourself out of the situation. That happens in June this year. And that 365-day reference, maybe you've been battling for a year, for years. Eight of Swords. Battling the deception. The Seven of Swords on the bottom. That's the moon in Aquarius. Battling the deception. This is a message from the man upstairs. The Six of Cups is... I just heard tainted. Something that you were trying to build in the past. Sorry, I'll give the finger there. Something that you were trying to build in the past that somebody stole from you is now actually tainted, which means that even if you get it back, there's a bad taste in your mouth. There's something coming back from the past. The Sun in Scorpio, it's got a sting to it. The outcome of this situation, the King of Wands. Now, in this deck, the King of Wands makes a decision to leave everything and walk away. A new beginning. And on the bottom, Seven of Wands. Instead of staying and battling, Mars and Leo, that is the Seven of Wands. Mars energy is them there are fighting words. That's what I heard. Them there are fighting words. Instead of staying and battling. Because maybe the win is the spiritual truth that you get, the spiritual wisdom that you get. And, you know, the connection. Like, I never had a connection with my grandfather. Yes, I had a relationship with my grandfather, but I never had a spiritual connection with my grandfather. For me now, I do. I have a spiritual connection with my grandfather because of all the little clues that he's left me in books. And maybe he didn't even realize what he was doing. Maybe his higher self was saying, you know what? Back to the Future. In 2025, now he passed away 20 years ago. In 2025, I know that she's going to open up this Bible and she's going to find, you know, X, Y, and Z. Back to the Future, the clues that are left. The clues that are left in the past that you need for the future. And it is still within this wheel, within this wheel, within this wheel. It's really beautiful. This is a really beautiful reading. And again, you know, if you come to a reading, well, specifically my readings, if you come to my reading and you think there's potentially an answer, there might be an answer. But what I want for you is for you to walk away with more questions. Not more questions because I haven't answered them, but more questions that you can then use. Tap into your intuition and tap into what you're spiritually and intuitively being guided to, because you are just opening yourself up, and eventually you won't need to come to a tarot reading to get the answers to the question. You'll be able to find them yourself. Nine of Cups on the bottom. That is Jupiter in Pisces. Let's have a look at this energy around you that has literally siphoned your energy. Look at that. The Devil. You got a soul contract with this person. This is the battle between good and evil. A soul contract with this person that, and potentially that's what this is. It's meant to put you on a spiritual journey. Something that happens to you that's meant to put you on a spiritual journey. And that's the truth. That's the Ace of Swords. It's an injustice. It's an injustice that happens that puts you onto a spiritual journey. Yeah, look at that. Five of Swords on the bottom. Battles. That's a mind battle. But if you can conquer your mind and you can reconcile with the fact that in this situation you've been morally in the right, then it doesn't matter who wins. Okay, let's have a look at what's happening in the 3D for you. The Four of Swords. That's very, look at this. Remain calm at this time. The Four of Swords. This is healing. Because the Three of Swords is being literally knifed. This is healing. Remain calm at this time. It's almost a spiritual timeout so that you can gather your thoughts. What else? It's the Hierophant wanting to come out again. Yeah, gaining strength. Gaining spiritual strength. And sometimes the best battles are won by not battling. Because maybe you actually need your spiritual strength. Maybe you actually need to plug into the charger. You need to charge up your spiritual strength, because the lessons that you learn in whatever this situation is, you actually are going to be applying them to a bigger battle that's down the road. King of Cups. That's just keeping things held back. And the Seven of Swords. Keeping things held back. And the Seven of Swords is this guy in the original drawing in the Rider-Waite Tarot. He's a soldier and he's stealing all the swords to stop the battle happening. He's almost like, he's taken all the bullets out of the gun so that nobody gets hurt. The King of Cups holds back. Potentially has got all the ammunition to fire, but holds back because he has spiritual depth. Eight of Swords holds back. Seven of Wands holds back. Okay. A message from the man upstairs. The Eight of Cups. That's a walking away card. Walking away to your Nine of Cups, which is wish fulfillment. Spiritual spiritual wish fulfillment, because you have learned the spiritual lesson. That's sitting under the Eight of Cups. You don't want to engage with the devil anymore. Six of Cups is leaving it in the past. Ten of Wands. That's completion, but the Ten of Wands is heavy burdens. Leaving the heavy burdens in the past because you've learnt the spiritual lesson that conserving your energy, staying where you are, is just draining a battery. Thou shalt not steal. And you've got the spiritual wisdom because you know that morally you're in the right. The King of Wands. Justice. At the end of the day, too many. I'm going to take them. The King of Wands on the King of Wands. Making the decision to walk away. Walking away, walking away. Brings in justice. Brings in balance because you're not in a battle anymore. The Seven of Wands, you've said, actually, I'm putting my sword down. And it kicks you round to the Fool, which is the beginning, completion, which is what I said in the beginning. And 365 days, the beginning of the year, the end of the year. The World card, which was this completion card here, and I referenced it in the Knight of Pentacles there, Saturn in Capricorn, lessons upon lessons upon lessons upon lessons, which in the potential final outcome, you learn, you get a new beginning on the foundation of the spiritual lesson that you've learned, that it doesn't matter who's right or wrong. If you are morally a good person and you've done the right thing, in the eyes of God, it's God that offers you a new beginning. You get a new beginning. The Nine of Cups, wish fulfillment. That's really lovely. Okay, I'm going to get... Actually, I'm going to get one of these. Let's have a look. A moon. When the moon waxes, it's your cue to set fresh goals and dreams. It's about relinquishing the control of focusing on trying to prove that morally you are right to somebody who operates in a world where they can justify immoral actions through a legal stance, I want to say. South Node in Libra. South Node in Libra is wrapping up a phase of putting others before oneself. This vibe can trigger a battle between self-drive and external demands, leaving those in its path feeling a little bit tangled. Your South Node is like your spiritual cozy cushion, the stuff you got to let go of in order to spread your wings and soar. So it's about releasing. And Libra is about justice. South Node in the 5th house, which would be... It's ruled by Leo. South Node cozying up in the 5th house. Your creative vibes are off the charts, but watch out for that sneaky desire to stand out too much. Your quest, break free from seeking approval and celebrate the quirks in everyone. This is where our soul feels snug. Maybe something that's been stolen from you, something that you've created and nurtured, and you're stuck and attached to it and trying to battle for control of it. Break free from seeking approval. There's something about ego in here. A battle with your ego about maybe who you are is attached to it. And the North Node in Gemini. If your North Node rocks the Gemini vibes, your mission is to level up your chit-chat and social skills to become the life of the party in your hood. With your superpower of flexibility and all-around talent, you are like a shining star in any crowd. What I would say to you is, if it's something that you've grown and nurtured, maybe you don't actually realize because you can't see the future. You don't actually, and I think of Michael J. Fox in Back to the Future. What he developed as an actor in his youth was actually part of a bigger role. Yeah, this is beautiful. Was actually part of a bigger role that he would play in the later years of his life. So his career was effectively stolen from him. Thou shalt not steal. His career was effectively stolen from him because of illness. He obviously, at a young age, I think in his late 20s, he got Parkinson's disease, stolen from him. But he has since become the world's biggest advocate for Parkinson's. I think he's raised billions and billions of dollars for Parkinson's research, because where he was, even though it was stolen, was the catalyst for something bigger, something that he couldn't see. So this Leo energy here of, you know, thinking that something that you're attached to, the desire to stand out, something that you're attached to, is actually maybe the beginning phase of a bigger journey that you're meant to be on. And it's taking, this is this spiritual lesson that you learn when you actually take a step back. And I can say the same for me. All of the things that I learned in my job as, you know, within my business, you know, I built websites and social media and all of this sort of stuff that I learned, even though it wasn't, well, it was stolen, but I made the decision to walk away from it. 10 years later, all of that knowledge, even though I wasn't using it in the same way, I've actually been able to use to help my daughter self-publish her books. And I wouldn't have been able to do that had I not gone through what happened in the past. Thou shalt not steal. Something that's been stolen will actually be returned in a different form, I want to say. It'll come, something that's stolen will actually come back as a blessing. That's really lovely. Okay, let's get some Scrabble tiles for you. Letters and numbers in here. I'll give it a shake. It does make a little bit of noise. So if you've got hearing sensitivity, just turn your volume down. I'm going to shake it in 3, 2, 1. A Y and a 4. A Q and a 10. An M and a 3. An E and a 1. A G and a 2, a V and a 4, a C and a 3, an I and a 1, a P and a 3, a R and a 1, a H and a 4, a B and a 3, PR. What would have been stolen? Your good name, a U and a 1, an N and a 1, a T and a 1, a D and a 2 on the down low, and a L and a 1. I would just say to you, God sees everything. What was stolen from you? Okay, I'm going to get 3 final cards. See if there's anything else. Oh, 10 of Pentacles. It will be returned. What was stolen? Deceptively stolen will be returned. The 10 of Pentacles. And it will be returned. Look at that. The 2 of Pentacles. The 10 of Wands on the bottom. Completion. And that wants to open up on the Queen of Cups, which is intuition. I'll pop that there. Actually, I'm going to pop the Queen of Cups there. Intuition. What was stolen is going to be returned, but not necessarily in the format that it was stolen. Behold, in your good name. That's what I was getting. I'm just going to get strength on the bottom. High Priestess. Yeah, celebration energy. The Star, healing after heartbreak. There's something fated within what's going on here in terms of a spiritual lesson, spiritual High Priestess, a spiritual lesson that you're meant to learn. And in the beginning of it, it's potentially something physical that's stolen, but it's something spiritual that's returned. So that's where I'm going to leave it. Thank you so much for joining me for this reading. If it resonated with you, please give it a like. If you haven't already, please subscribe. If you were called to any of my decks, the links to those can be found in the description box. Thanks again, and I will see you again in another reading.